Marcus Whitman's hands trembled as he stared at the letter, the words blurring through tears he refused to acknowledge. Stage 4. Inoperable. 6 months, maybe less. The richest man in America, with a net worth that could buy small countries, sat powerless in his marble-lined office, reduced to nothing more than a frightened child facing the one enemy his billions couldn't defeat. For 47 years, Marcus had built an empire through ruthless determination and calculated cruelty. He'd crushed competitors, fired thousands without a second thought, and measured his worth by the zeros in his bank account. His Manhattan penthouse was a fortress of cold steel and glass, designed to keep the world at arm's length. Success, he believed, was measured by how many people feared you, how many doors money could open, how many problems wealth could solve. But death, it seemed, wasn't impressed by his portfolio. The irony wasn't lost on him that the diagnosis came on the same day he'd planned to fire Elena Rodriguez, the quiet woman who'd cleaned his penthouse for 3 years. She was 62, moved slowly due to arthritis, and according to his efficiency reports, took too long to complete her tasks. In his world, inefficiency was unforgivable. Elena arrived that evening as she always did, carrying her worn cleaning supplies and greeting him with the same gentle smile he'd never bothered to return. She was a small woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a faded blue uniform that had seen better years. Everything about her spoke of a life lived simply, without pretense or ambition for grandeur. "Good evening, Mr. Whitman," she said in her soft, accented voice. "How was your day?" Marcus looked up from his mahogany desk, the termination papers waiting beside his laptop. Something in her genuine concern caught him off guard. When was the last time someone had asked him that question and actually cared about the answer? "Fine," he muttered, then found himself adding, "actually, number." It was terrible. Elena paused, setting down her supplies. "I'm sorry to hear that. Would you like to talk about it?" The absurdity struck him immediately. Here was a woman he was about to fire, offering comfort to a man worth more than she'd see in 100 lifetimes. He almost laughed at the presumption, but something in her eyes stopped him. There was no pity, no calculation, just simple human kindness. "Why do you care?" he asked. "Because you're hurting," she replied matter-of-factly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "When someone hurts, we help. That's what people do." Over the following weeks, as Marcus grappled with his mortality, he began to notice Elena in ways he never had before. She hummed softly while she worked, always the same melody, a lullaby. She told him that her grandmother had sung to her in Guatemala. She never rushed, taking time to water his neglected plants, straighten his books, and once, he caught her gently talking to his goldfish, the one living thing in his sterile apartment. "You talk to fish?" he asked one evening, finding her crouched beside the aquarium. Elena smiled, not embarrassed in the least. "Mauricio gets lonely. Fish need friends too." "You named my fish Mauricio?" "He looks like my brother," she said simply. Same serious expression. Against all logic, Marcus found himself looking forward to their brief conversations. Elena shared stories of her family, 4 children she'd raised alone after her husband's death, grandchildren she video-called every Sunday, a community garden where she grew vegetables for neighbors who struggled to afford groceries. Her life was rich in ways his spreadsheets could never calculate. "Aren't you angry?" Marcus asked one day as she carefully dusted his awards and accolades. "Working multiple jobs, struggling to pay rent while people like me have more money than we could spend in 10 lifetimes?" Elena considered this, running her cloth over a crystal trophy. "Anger is heavy," she said finally. "I carry enough already, worry for my children, sadness for my husband, fear about getting older. Why would I choose to carry more?" The question haunted him. Marcus had spent decades carrying anger like a weapon, using it to fuel his ambition, justify his ruthlessness. He told himself it made him strong, but looking at Elena's peaceful face, he wondered if he'd been carrying poison all along. The turning point came on a Thursday evening when Elena arrived later than usual, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Everything okay?" Marcus found himself asking. Elena hesitated, then sat down heavily on his couch. Something she'd never done before. "My grandson, Diego, he's sick, leukemia. The insurance, it doesn't cover everything, And the treatments. She trailed off, hands folded in her lap. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. How much do you need? Oh no, Mr. Whitman, I wasn't asking for a how much. The doctors say maybe 200,000 for the full treatment, but we'll find a way. We always do. 200,000. Marcus spent more than that on wine each year. He could write a check and not even notice the missing money. But as he reached for his checkbook, Elena's hand stopped him. I can't take your charity, she said quietly. It wouldn't be right. Why not? I have more money than I know what to do with. Because that's not how strength works, Elena replied. Real strength isn't about having power over others. It's about lifting others up, but only when they can accept the help with dignity. My Diego, he's strong. Our family is strong. We'll find our way. Marcus stared at her. This woman who cleaned toilets for a living, who struggled to pay rent, who was turning down a fortune because her pride and principles mattered more than her desperation. In that moment, he realized he'd spent his entire life confusing wealth with worth, confusing fear with respect. What if it wasn't charity? He asked slowly. What if there was a way to help that honored your strength instead of undermining it? Over the next month, Marcus did something unprecedented. He listened. He learned about Elena's community, her dreams, her struggles. He discovered she'd always wanted to start a non-profit to help immigrant families navigate the healthcare system, but lacked the resources and connections. Working together, they established the Elena Rodriguez Foundation. Marcus provided the funding and business expertise, while Elena brought the vision and community trust. Within weeks, it helped dozens of families access medical care, legal assistance, and job training. Diego's treatment was covered through the foundation's emergency fund, alongside 20 other children facing similar battles. The work was exhausting and often heartbreaking, but Marcus found himself energized in ways his corporate victories had never achieved. When a family got housing assistance, when a child received life-saving treatment, when an elderly man finally became a citizen after decades of waiting, these victories felt different. They felt real. As his own health declined, Marcus spent more time working alongside Elena than in his corporate office. He watched her comfort grieving mothers, celebrate with families receiving good news, and advocate fiercely for people who couldn't advocate for themselves. She was stronger than any CEO he'd ever known, carrying the weight of entire communities on her shoulders without complaint. You're dying, aren't you? Elena asked one evening as they reviewed foundation applications. It wasn't really a question. Marcus nodded, surprised to find he could discuss it calmly now. A few weeks, maybe less. Are you afraid? Not anymore, he realized. I used to think strength meant being invincible, untouchable. But you taught me something different. You taught me that strength means being vulnerable enough to care, brave enough to help, and humble enough to accept that our worth isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by what we give away. Elena reached over and squeezed his hand. You learn well. Marcus passed away on a Tuesday morning, surrounded not by financial advisors or corporate lawyers, but by Elena and the families they'd helped through the foundation. His obituary mentioned his business achievements, but the people who attended his memorial spoke instead of the man he'd become in his final months. The one who'd learned that true strength wasn't about building walls to keep the world out, but about tearing them down to let love in. The Elena Rodriguez Foundation continues to thrive, funded by Marcus's entire estate. On the wall of their community center hangs a simple plaque. True strength is not in standing alone at the top, but in lifting others up beside you. Below it, a photo shows an elderly cleaning woman and a billionaire, working side by side, both discovering what it really means to be powerful. Elena still hums her grandmother's lullaby while she works, but now she works in her own office, helping others find their strength. And sometimes, when the afternoon light hits the aquarium just right, she swears Mauricio looks a little less serious, a little more hopeful, as if he too understands that the greatest fortune isn't what you keep, but what you choose to share.